Hello guys, hello, what's up, guys, I'm back. After a very long time, I'm back. So, yeah, I gave the mains. I got selected in pre, and I just, yeah, on January, paper was on physics paper 2, and paper 1 last January 16th, and this is February of 7. So in the meantime, between pre and mains, I just posted year 2, then year 3. I was focusing on my mains, so I didn't understand that. Not many people watch my live stream, but hey, yes, this is time, right? So this time, I have not planned anything at yet, but this live stream is just for first live stream of my podcast. So it is what it is. We'll go through newspapers. This time I'm feeling like that I should make more videos, and the content, but the quality will come with time. So there's nothing much else I would like to say. All I'm waiting for is result. But in the meantime, what I'm doing that I wanted to document, and the main purpose of this thing on these screens now is to just document how I would approach this, because at the end of the day, when I gave my mains, the result was that it went okay, in the sense that I was able to do lots of questions, and probably there will be a call for probably. I mean that probability is greater than 50, from which I gather is actually quite a lot as compared for an exam of this type. But it is in the category of, I would like to say, most likely. So in that event, that plus I will be completing other things. So rather than be me ranting, I don't like to make videos. I would not like to make those videos in which I have not yet achieved something, but the documentation process is what is going on, so it will play later. It does not matter how people watch or not. These will be up on my channel. So if I get success this time, then this will serve as how the thought process of an aspirant was when he appeared for the exam, what was after, or what was between interview and the main. If I get an interview call, what was, it gives the insight into an aspirant who is successful at the end of the day. Now, what I will be doing now is my anticipation that I will be preparing for the 4th attempt. I will be filling out my form. And on that will be my 4th attempt. In discover? I have discovered a new exercise of news reading, which would help, I guess, to have up on this channel, and through that we will be discovering much more, reading much more into it. So that will be there. In that sense, it is what it is. This is more like a documentation process, and if I'm successful, then it will be monetized. So I'm not really worried about that stuff. It's just that it will be, it has value in the sense of how they feel that they are going to be processed and they are appearing for different stages. The problem is that people would assume that throughout the whole process, an aspirant was completely hopeful, or he was optimistic all the time, and he was certain that he will achieve, he or she will attain success. But that is not true at all. But a lot of time is devoted, a lot of mental capacity is also devoted to the fact of doubting what you did and what you did not. But moving forward, this was like an update. I don't know. That is something else. But so let's start with newspaper. Okay. So let's start with newspaper. So the thought process of being arrested is an that was India lost its voice is actually true. It is not shocking. She led a beautiful life in Bharat, but a loss is a loss. Rest in peace. Alright, that was bleak and neat. Now, when we so my thoughts are neat. Reading up neat. This way, allow the context. So if you want to put me in so the exercise that I am talking about is inspired from the great Rishabh Gupta. So the techniques is the title of any news. We will read it in context of something greater. So when I am talking about need, it can link to greater things, like it can be linked to education, right? NEET is, after all, an entrance exam for medical education. Now, what the context is, if the context is much more specific here, then there is a clear connection that calls for a better exercise. So now what we will do is look neat in the context of education, because one of the arguments would be that apart from it raising the merit also need in general can also be reflected in. So there is a topic that this topic first we will lay out some facts. Facts about commercialization. Education and business is a $24 billion industry in India. So it will include the schools, coaching centers, and the higher education institutions, as well as vocational institutions like ITI. Now, it's a big industry. The grower is well. Now, education, commercialization. Especially among the teachers, which will provide better teachers and their salaries will increase just because of this competition. Imagine the competition between what MIS and NIS has is a way to improve quality of teachers and tests on the board coaching centers as well as the other coaching centers that are looking for survival issues. Because the UPSC civil service is much more larger than the field. Just because the attempts are limited, so they will prepare to join coaching, etc. But they not. Fill the form and it comes. So the candidates that appear are about 30 lakhs, but there are many more that are preparing for the exam. So even in that survival so obviously the standards of teaching are raised, the salaries are raised to keep should imply that the quality of teaching and learning increases. Now, the disadvantages are much more stark, in my opinion. First of all, commercialization means that there will be lack of access to students who are of lower socio-economic backgrounds. It is very simple, because if, for example, these students do not make it to the government institutions of higher caliber, they won't be able to make it, they won't be able to get in to the private institutions that are run by fees. The fees are very, fees is very high, they cannot pay that, and they will be denied that they should have gotten or others are getting. So it reduces access. This is one of the greatest points against commercialization. Secondly, commercialization actually does not lead to the outcomes. Why? Because what are you selling? Commercialization is the product. There must be some product, right? The product in this situation is either the degree, the certification, which were granted by the accreditation commission. So NAAC in India grants the rights or the certification to universities and universities or institutions that medical institutions are being accredited by MCI. So overall, what they do is they provide these institutions to give certifications, which would ultimately mean that those people who have these certifications have, in a sense, they do have this knowledge. But the product, that is the product. Not the product should be of any educational institution is that knowledge behind that certification, right? So when some guy is getting the certification and it is commercial, so what he will expect is after paying X amount of money, he will get the certification no matter what. This premise reduces the learning outcome heavily, which ties into the fact that more than 40% of graduates in India are unemployable. products and the mushrooming of institutions, be it engineering and medical, these private institutions, suggests a fact that commercialization is happening of education and that it is not a good thing. Now, what also now focusing on need in this example, now laying down all the facts. Now, the facts against need, the facts with need is that it should, in theory, prevent this commercialization because after having after the candidates are selected to need, that is, what is need? Need is the exam that comes from the Medical Commission Act, NMC Act, which specifies that any medical institution that has to give the certifications to their students as doctors must admit only those people, or must give the seats to only those people who have clear need. They appear on the roll and all of that should be there, which in theory sets a standard because need is difficult in a sense. It tests, first it tests the candidate. So if you have X score, it would roughly correlate with your knowledge of plus one, plus two years of the secondary biology and your actual medical profession in the future. Into the rank that you are need. So that is standard. That means that there is testing on learning outcomes. So it is similar to how the commercialization of education has been encountered in engineering by ensuring that people who graduate also have to give GATE to get certified amount of marks in that exam that correlates their learning outcomes or after getting out of the education that they were before. So that's it standardizes the learning outcome of the degree behind it. So the degree plus the GATE will give you the correct idea how good this engineer is at his job. Now, on that similar note, NEET should also work like that. It should work like that. All right. In that sense, is the background? No. Oh my God. But hey, so this is what I would say. I guess higher. This. Okay. Now I'm speaking higher. Oh my God. Anyways, these glitches will get removed when I get live stream. Anyways, so this is the argument of standardization in favor of need. Now, this should, in theory, reduce the commercialization because standardization is there. But first, need is for screening. It cannot standardize the learning outcome of the medical institutions once the candidate is there. Secondly, it also reduces the access. What Tamil Nadu commission, there was a commission to assess the impact of need on Tamil Nadu citizens. So what it found was that it created a negative impact on the access of Tamil Nadu's multiple people into these medical institutions that they erected themselves for the Tamil Nadu citizens. So that has caused a debate over whether need is good or bad. Now, so it's standardization of screening and not the education that one would get when they reach there. So commercialization is not countered that easily now. If something like GATE was there, then I would say that okay, if you standardize the final result, that is more or less an incentive for these institutions to provide some learning, which would stand the test of GATE when it occurs, when they appear for GATE, which would basically be the final standard. So that is there. So commercialization is not stopped in case of NEET, it is not that effective. And this is the overall debate, that whether NEET is or is not effective in solving the commercialization problem of education and access problem of education as well. Now, NEET in the realm of federalism is also a problem, because at the end of the day, NEET is a nationwide exam for state institutions, this institutions that are run by state. In theory, if true federalism was followed in India, what would be there? That there is complete control of state on the institution that it runs. What would that mean is, it basically has control over the admission of the students that it would basically teach, the teachers and staff, and the funding of the institution. Now, the funding part is obviously with the state. That is how they run the institutions. But now the students and the candidates that appear are not in control of the state. That is probably against the true federalistic nature that that in theory we do not have true federalism. What we do have is federalism. And now the true nature of education's federalism is that, first of all, education falls in the concurrent list. Exactly the entry number I do not know, but it does fall in concurrent list. But to maintain the medical standards, is in the union list. So in essence, it is not unconstitutional, but it does raise the debate that should we basically change this, because we can amend this. 446. But changing this list requires your ratification. So Article 368 would be used. Okay, so first of all, the concurrent list, the article number in the concurrent list we would like to see, right? In the concurrent list, criminal law, yes. So the entry number 25 in the concurrent list, added by obviously your mini constitution of the 1976 42nd Amendment, says education including technical, medical, and university subject to the provisions of entry 63, 64, 65, and 66 of list 1 would mean that this medical education would come under union list 66, 67, etc. See here, coordination and determination of standards in institutions for higher education or research in scientific and technical institutions. Let me show you on Google. So union list schedule 7. Can you all see? I would like to see. Yeah, you can see it. The 7 schedule. So the 66th, and here it is: coordination and determination of standards in institutions for higher education. So this, if you can see it clearly, coordination and determination of standards in institutions for higher education or research and scientific and technical institutions, all of this covers medical education. So medical education's standards that have to be maintained are within the union list. If you can see. My bad. It is the union list that we saw. This is the list 1 union list. Now, in the concurrent list, it's the 25th entry. Yes, the 25th entry. Education, including technical, including medical, is within the concurrent list. So, first of all, union is, so this is completely constitutional, so there is no debate on constitutionality of NEET. There cannot be. It is constitutional, and after all. But the question of federalism does come that the state institutions, the power should be with them. What should be, in theory, should be done is you should have central education institution, central medical education institution, which set the standard for learning outcome, which the union list would be used for that. But at the end of the day, we have to ensure it's for all, and NEET in that respect should be there. But NEET is just a screening test. What they need is something like GATE. Between graduation and post graduation, you must have an exam that basically says, okay, this guy, this girl has this amount of knowledge of medical institution. Should they be provided with post graduation? No. So what actually happens in post graduation exams? The educational institutions that would accept PGs would conduct exams, and you would have to give them, and then they would assess the knowledge. So exams for post graduation are being done in India for medical educational institutions, but they should also have exams like GATE, which would clear it up, for everything. That should be there. That would actually help. That would actually help. Now the federalism part is that only that. First of all, it's not constitutional. It is constitutional, but the fact remains that what we need is an institution. What we need is an institution that would, I just rambled. NEET and federalism are connected with the fact that the institutions run by state should have complete control over their students that they accept, which NEET is a problem, but it conflicts with the need to have high standards of learning outcomes that India as a whole would like, that its engineers and medical professionals are actually above, not at par, but above the whole of the world. Whole of the world will require pristine standards, actually. So that is this federalism versus the effective. That is the debate that this would be resolved by professionals. This would be resolved by policymakers of higher standard. This would be resolved by research, surveys, etc. This is how it would be resolved. It would not be resolved by a single guy sitting and thinking. This needs more data. That's what it means. All right. Further we go. Conservancy workers bear the burden of segregation and so. Appeals by corporations to citizens largely ignored. This is also, I believe this is important. I believe this is important, the fact that it connects with solid waste management rules. Now, solid waste management rule, when we read in prelims focus, we tend to focus on extended producer responsibility. So segregation of waste is tied, now it is tied to citizen participation in governance, citizen charters, and their effectiveness, in governance. What is the goal of governance? It is Repair Act. Good governance would be responsive, effective, participatory, accountable, responsible, resilient, honest, open, all of those good things. So what, inclusive, etc. So it would be that, transparent, all of that stuff, good stuff, right? and the goal is to provide some services. So waste management is one of those services that must be provided to the citizens of any urban area, not only urban area but rural as well. But here we focus on urban local bodies, so we will be talking about the citizens of an urban area. So largely in that respect, why the urban local bodies cannot, they are employing. So this article in the larger context is actually relevant. Yes, it is actually relevant to citizen participation and its effectiveness, and citizen charters and the communication between the public service provider and the recipient of that. So citizen participation, first of all, is important. As you can see, the burden falls on the worker and the effectiveness of the public service reduces due to that. It also ties into the fact that the workers are unskilled, unpaid, and underappreciated. That is also there, which ties into the three F's that are reduced with the urban local bodies. So this all actually ties with the urban local bodies and their effectiveness in providing public services, which is hindered by the three F's: the function, functionaries, and funds. If funds were higher, they would employ segregation at a more fundamental level that would ease the works of the functionaries, which are underskilled. So if they were skilled more, or they were provided with better equipments. How? So now the equipment that would actually matter in this situation, segregators are they're waste segregators. Waste segregators. Automated waste segregating bin garbage sorting system. So it is actually not available. So not available in the sense it is in the phase of infancy and research. That is quite, so it is on the edge of technology. It is the edge of the technology to have that. So we will not have that. We will have skills. I mean, even after the skill, the burden is there. So it is not about the functionaries and funds and all of that. Even after the funds there will be segregation. What needs to happen, that at a source there's segregation. It is all about the citizen participation. Why are the citizens not participating in that? Is it due to the lack of awareness, or the lack of effort that they do want to put in? You know? At a fundamental level, what would happen? There are two truths, I believe, that actually asking people to do this means that these people, normal person would have to do extra. Now, the incentive to actually throw garbage is obviously there. Everybody needs an empty dustbin, and everybody needs to put the garbage away. That is how it works. Everybody wants their home to be clean and without garbage. That is what they do. So now they're only, so they have a wish to clear all the garbage, and they would do so, but they don't want to put any extra effort. They don't want to put any extra effort. They don't want to put any extra effort. That is also true. So it can be because Indians are lazy in segregation. So that would mean that there needs to be an attitudinal change. That is what I'm alluding towards. It is not the fact. It is not the fact that the people of India are lazy or stupid. It is the fact that I would like to focus on is the attitudinal problem. How citizen charters are actually ineffective. Citizen charter and the communication of urban local bodies have been ineffective in changing the attitudes of people. Now, now it is certainly clear that education helps, because if it is very easy to imbibe these values. So what you need to do is, at the cognitive level, there must be inclusion of segregation of waste within the values. So it is a long-term plan in which the urban local bodies communicate with the educational institutions to effectively teach their students the value of segregation and its importance, which would at the end of the day will result in citizens of that urban local body to have those kids around, that they will become adult if they remain in the urban area, that would produce those adults who will have positive correlation with segregation. But what to do about the adults now, the short term attitudinal? So ad campaigns, the campaign needs to be intensified. That can be there because of that triangle. At the end of the day, workers will have to work, segregation will be there. Enforcing that is not good. So the sustained pressure from great officials on recycling and reducing the waste of landfills with inadequate cooperation from all will. There must be training of the staff, and they should be paid much better. They would perform much better, I would say. This is what it is, I guess. Now I would like to see the editorial, because that is I don't give a shit about this. When the parties hit the campaign trail, here DMT came to power, cheating people, and this is all politics. That does not, do shit to me. Death of a terrorist, that I also heard. Geopolitical and sectarian violence in Iraq and Syria enhance threat from Islamic State. That of Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurayshi, the leader of the Islamic State, has come to a time when the terrorist outfit has been trying to revive its fortunes in Iraq and Syria, its core region. A few weeks earlier, IS militants had carried out an ambitious attack, the largest in the day of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, IS found in 2019, on a prison in northeastern Syria's Hasaka to free thousands of jihadists, but it was a failure as American soldiers joined the Syrian Democratic Forces, the Kurdish militia, to push back the militants. Qurayshi blew himself up along with his family, his predecessor, did 3 years ago when U.S. Special Forces approached his hideout in Idlib, the province controlled by jihadists linked with Al-Qaeda. When he became the IS chief, the entity had transformed itself into a caliphate, control over some key cities in Iraq and Syria, and then underground insurgency with global branches. The Qurayshi, the IS continued to operate like a loose confederation of autonomous networks. Its Afghan and West African branches expanded operations, while in Iraq and Syria, it staged occasional attacks. A reminder that it is only the physical caliphate that has been destroyed, and at the end of the day, it has survived. It is more than a coincidence that Baghdadi and Quraysh were hiding in Syria's Idlib. The Syrian government's efforts to recapture the territory had not been successful, as there is strong regional opposition, especially from Turkey, which fears another refugee influx. Regional opposition, especially from Turkey. The province is controlled by Tahrir al-Sham, a globally designated terrorist outfit that was formerly known as Jabhat al-Nusra. the Syrian branch. So basically, it was controlled by the Syrian branch of Al Qaeda. Then Abu Muhammad al Jalani, the Al Qaeda military, was sent to Syria by Baghdadi in 2013. In the early stages of the civil war, to open a branch of his outfit. Okay, if a lasting solution to the jihadist control of Idlib is not found, the future Baghdadi and Qurayshis would also take refuge in this region. Another important lesson the ISIS recent attacks provide is that Syrian Kurds remain a key ally. So there are two things, that is, Syria has not been able to recapture the territory. It is still being controlled. Idlib is in control of Al Qaeda. So these Baghdadis and Quraysh would keep coming up. Another important lesson from the ISIS recent attack. So basically, you have to capture the territory, otherwise it will keep breeding. And Turkey also, one thing is, Turkey is providing the opposition to the capture of this, which is slowing down the process of weeding out terrorists that are born in Syria, basically, or take refuge there. Provided that Kurds remain a key ally, the US should not throw them at the mercy of the Turkey, like the Trump administration once did. Once the IS threat is minimized, they should be incorporated in the larger regional counter-terror strategy that has learned how to survive these occasional setbacks. It has lost caliphate of commanders, but there are thousands of soldiers across strike. The still open wounds of the civil war in Syria, the lingering. Let them survive. Let them survive. So far, as long as these geopolitical and sectarian violence remain in Iraq and Syria, the IS will not vanish. Geopolitical and sectarian violence, which is obviously a very true statement. Basically, you need stability to weed out terrorists. So the point remains that stability is very important to weed out terrorists and fighting. We have seen it was in Libya. What I was thinking of was Libya. When you think of Libya, you would assume that it's a war-torn country, but it is not. It is just some provinces or some areas that are under war, and there are ceasefires, etc. But in general, people live in peace, I guess. But there is a civil war. There is factionalization in Libya as well. But in Syria, there are problems. Now, I do not remember at all what caused. So there are a lot of stuff that I would like to do now. First of all, so this is why it takes a while to get through the newspaper, and it's perfectly fine in that sense, because this exercise, I'm not an expert in this exercise, and it is very engaging when you have to put it in a larger context. So what I'm trying to do is basically try the killing of this Qurayshi figure in Syria's Idlib, what it means for the Middle East, or at least for the Syrian civil war and war against terrorism in that sense. So there are, or what I can do is even say the parallels to Jammu and Kashmir. What would that mean? Basically, it is similar to we killing many top commanders of the terrorist outfits like Jaish Mohammed in Jammu and Kashmir, killing of those commanders, and still this organization still continue to threaten the security and sovereignty of India. Similarly, so what is the reason? The parallel. So there are two things in which this article or this happening can be linked. So this is what the exercise is all about. So So we will be doing this exercise a lot, and this is a very engaging stuff. This is very engaging stuff, and this is great to prepare yourself from the newspaper, because you know stuff now. We as aspirants know, and we can put it in larger perspective. And when we do that, we will find commonalities between the happenings of the world, because that is what should happen. The things that happen have a timeline, they have history, and cause and effect and chain reaction type stuff. So what happens in the world? So in essence, yeah, this is what I have learned today, is basically it should tie back to multiple things that are going to happen in the world. It should tie back to that. And why it should happen that way is this very simple reason is because the things are not happening out of the blue 80% of the time. 20% of the news, okay, it is out of the blue, but or something new has started. But old shit leads to new shit as well. Basically, something that happened, there were 2 groups, 3 groups, multiple groups, they interacted, they produced something again. Now these groups will have some reactions to it again. They will keep on interacting and producing more and more news. And this will, if this their actions will affect others as well, especially in a globalized world. So that will connect to something else, and then 20% will create this new 20% new shit will create another new shit in future, when this will become older, and this cycle continues to go on and on. So this should actually be a very effective in theory. By logic, it is very appealing. Yo. Okay, so there is the parallel question with respect to India, and Jammu and Kashmir comes into mind because there is political instability in that region now. No government as of now. Union is administrating, it's a union territory after all now. So the political instability is that not everyone is in line with that, especially those who are backed by Pakistan. So the instability, political and other kinds, are largely dictated by Pakistan as well, and because there are separatists that are in action there. So what is the parallel? Parallel is instability leads to terrorism. Another parallel is that killing commanders does not seem to counter these organizations, because number one, these organizations run at such a level that the commanders do have certain candidates would rise up as leader in case they die. And definitely it makes sense, that these terrorist organizations do, because they have been around for so long that it must be norm by now to have your standbys, because they die and chain of command is there. That is what it means. What it means also is that these organizations are very deep and decentralized as well, because there is a loose federation as well, which would also explain many lone wolf attacks, especially popular in Kashmir. Is supposed to be a lone wolf attack, but Sheikh Muhammad took responsibility of it. It's all to, so the parallels pretty much are these two only that I can think of present. what it means for Syria civil war. So you will have to think about the Syria. So al-Bashar is the president. It seems to be like a necrocracy, just like Korea. Syrian civil war. How did it start? How did it start? I don't remember. Something to do with UK civil war? I mean Iraq civil war? It did this, Saddam Hussein happened. Then what? Yeah. Iraq invaded what? Its neighbor. Iraq invaded its neighbor. There's Jordan and Iraq joining, and then above them is Syria. Okay, Kuwait. So Iraq invaded Kuwait, which prompted WMD discussions whether Saddam Hussein ejected, and then Iraq spawned Al Qaeda, which resulted in the Twin Towers attack. And 9/11. This Syria civil war. So I do not know about Syria civil war. I just been there as this Hezbollah, which is a political organization as well. There are a lot of shit in Syria, and I have not connected. Then there's Syria versus Turkey, because Turkey is just above Syria. Yes. Let me see. Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. Iraq is one of the biggest countries in the Middle East. It is Quran and shit, so it is also known as that. I guess I do not know about that. So it just basically means that I need to know about it. Simple enough. Trying to understand this. Wait a minute. Can we broken it down into 5 feathers? Unofficially, internal conflicts are bound to happen, but political instability would be there. Should have been ethnic, Wahhabism, the Palestine, Iran society, American foreign policy, Ahmed Bash, Iraq, ISI, time of media, conflict, treaties everywhere, Cold Wars everywhere found. Iran War, Iran everybody grab all resources, all Iraq. So with Afghan War, okay, Gulf War, Iraq, okay, so this is Gulf War. The sanction of Iraq, US government based in government. Iraq invasion, Iraq has civil war after Saddam left fell on sectarian lines. Fundamentalist terrorists flooded Iraq to fight. For democratic protests to initially Libya, Egypt, and Yemen resumed fall. Syria got plunged in a civil war, ISI civil war. So, in war for Syria, Russia and Iran backed the government of Saudi and backed the rulers. Initially, victory Syria has realized Russia's swing on global power as to itself the government survive. Shut the fuck up. Alright. I already know Syria. so this is some shit that I basically just some ideas. Actually, I'm studying this. So it has something to do with what? Gulf for and Arab Spring. So we will have to see it now. I have some idea. Syrian Civil War. Bashar al-Assad. Air campaign in Iraq. There was a revolution. With respect to Libya, it was with respect to Libya. I remember. 11,000 airstrikes against targets in Syria while the US-led coalition remained support for. No. The Islamic State has fought with everyone, and there is from Iraq as well. Islamic State led from Iraq to Syria. This was also there. This is post Iraq, preemptive strike Iraq 2003. Sorry. Islamic State of Iraq. ISIS. Global Caliphate. So airstrikes have been done. One hour long. Oh fuck. I just completely forgot what I was doing. I just cannot. Transitioning is very bad. Airstrikes. Alright, with Russian airs. So the government. So there are multiple factors in Syrian civil war. Multiple are actually three. Government versus ops. Then there is ISIS. So it's everyone, it seems. And the ISIS, and then there is Kurds. This is called civil war. This is the civil war, and I don't know what the fuck is this. how does this explain? This is just a bunch of photos that just say that it's bad. Yes, it is bad. I do understand that, but not why I am. Many Syrians are complaining about high unemployment, corruption, blah blah blah. Under Bashar al-Assad. So he has been ruled for more than 2 years right now. Nationwide, gender spread, intensified. Observers took up arms, must defend themselves. Foreign backed terrorism, the violence rapidly escalated as the country descended into civil war. So I would like to see how Syria looked before 2011. That's remove the topsoil. Dust storm. In addition to causing violent dust storms, rainfall, severely. Severe also part of that. Even relatively favorable. So agriculture was shit. Euphrates is gone down from Turkey. There are constant grass here. Only 21 could be irrigated. Agriculture is 20% and 5% oil fields. These were 330,000 barrels, but not all, but about 70,000 of that now. Sales supply about 20% of GDP and a third of export earnings. Production subsequently fell by 50%. Oil is of poor quality, sour, and expensive to refine. Industries and energy, about a third of the adult male population was percentage on the national income before the war. Moves were made to transport oil and gas from father. Obviously, these money have been stopped now. There is sort of cottage industry and cool refining of petroleum products for local use and smuggling. Just the latest install. I first visited Syria in 1946. Who are you? Are you 1,000 years old? Ah, okay. In 1958. Extensively, especially in the Middle East. 1958. Okay. So I just could not. It's densely populated. In 2010, it reached nearly. That's the country offered. So 1946, 70, 80, 90 years old, I guess. 46, 80 plus what? 86 years old. He's more than 90 million or taller.
The bottom line is that population research is out of balance, but there has been modern agriculture and more efficient cropping with the seed areas cut out for it. They have been able to agree on how to work what they have. It is important on social contract. Their view of their national development evolved and then shattered. So there has been economic tension. Okay, Syria has been fought over by foreign powers. In many countries, the society has been elite Muslims. Also, has historically been essential for a little group of people. Princes from one another defined religious or ethnic terms. Several of these communities were left over from previous generations. In most of the last 5 centuries, and what is today Syria was part of Ottoman Empire, groups of Orthodox, Catholic, and other Christians, Alawites, Ismailis, and others of Shia Muslims, and Yazidis, Kurds, Jews, and Druze, enclaves of neighborhoods of various cities, and found alongside Sunni Muslim Arabs. So there are a lot of people here. Christians, Jews, Kurds, Shias and Sunnis, Arabs. So there's ethnic, religious conflict. Oh my god, it's a lot of conflict here. In Ottoman rule, the population was organized in two overlapping ways. First, there was no Syria in the nation state, but rather provinces, Turkish Pashaliks, that were centers on the ancient cities. The most important of these was Damascus, which may be the oldest permanently settled city in the world today, and Aleppo. The concept of a state, much less a nation state, did not enter the political thought until the end of the 19th century. The inhabitants of the various parts of what became Syria could move without feeling or being considered alien from one province of the Ottoman Empire to the next. Thus, the grandfathers of the great grandfathers of the people alive today were asked of what entity they belonged to and probably named the city or village where they paid their taxes. So there was no nation state, all they knew was about the Ottoman Empire, and more even the city they have. Or Damascus, Vilayat. Second, throughout its centuries of rule, the Ottoman generally was content to have it situated by their own behavior, did not have the means or incentive to intrude into their daily lives. Muslims, whether Turk or Arab or Kurd, shared with them freely government. Islamic, Moors and laws, other ethnic religious nations, was self-governing, set in military and foreign affairs. The following map is modern, but shows approximately the traditional distribution of minority groups and enclaves. The spots of Christians and Shiites, Druze, and Sunni Kurds in some places. And I'll show you the same will also moved into mainly Muslim cities where they tended to live in more or less segregated neighborhoods. They resemble medieval European Arab ghettos or modern Italy's or Chinatowns. Whether in enclaves or the neighborhood, each non-Muslim community dressed according to its customs, spoke its own languages, and lived according to its unique cultural pattern. It basically retained its identity. Ran its schools, provided such facilities, such as the system was Quran and traditional hadiths. This parent was legally obligatory. Consequently, when it entered diverse and tolerant social traditions from Syria, French World War, which had decided the war was not fought, but long before it just like because these were the leaders against the Ottoman Empire. So France lost Britain, the main reason of what in Iraq. The conflict divided among the great power, most of what became Syria known as Zone A, on which French gave to British as a people. Prepared for independence for the French children. they yeah, this is not common. It's French to make that country for Islam spread of what gradually began a group instead of this document 20 years after that we begin to speak of the concept of statehood. Indeed, a sense of statehood nation was major emerged. So when French policies did not work, nationalism began to offer an alternate vision of political life. The French colonial ethnicity was back on violence throughout the French period, in contrast to the relatively rapid rule of the Ottoman Empire. Violence was never far below the French rule. The French bombarded Damascus, which they had been changed, and they pacified the city with martyrs, arguing more for the peaceful intervals. Constitution was proclaimed periodically, only to be revoked, and if it was pronounced until it was signed again, not by the Syrians nor given by, but bestowed on Syria by the British army, with the French Syria of Vichy, and had added cities there British made overseas. However, left behind the Free French continued essentially the Vichy. The last French soldier did not leave. National Day. Fair character in carrying 6 years of thus humanity was little more than a sullen and trustworthy coincidence. While they did not create dissension nor certainly magnified it, and while they did not create hostility to foreigners, they gave them a proficient target that was the world nationalities to forces today. So it was colonized by French, which gave the idea of Syria as a nation and magnified the differences in the whole of at least educated Syrians may have been emotionally satisfying, but not proved to be an organizing principle. Even spurred by it, Syrians did not grab the means to control their destiny. So in the years after the French were forced out, who leaders after military dictator spoke nationalist rhetoric, failed to lead his followers. Mobile force the army leadership threw the country into the arms of one Arab leader. They admired and trusted Egypt's President Gamal Abdel Nasser. What? Two. They thought and hoped that Egypt, with the bellwether of Arab world, could give them stability. So for 3.5 years, they were out of the United Arab Republic. Despite the media, real event was a reluctant participant in certain affairs and set what turned out to be in acceptable terms, including the withdrawal of arms from politics and the holding of referendum at work. So in 1961 was thrown back to their resources of fundamental problem to face what it meant to be a Syrian. All those because they were speaking Sunnis, but since the road to worldly success was Arabic speaking Assyrians like the inhabitants of South Asia found themselves they were not already attracted. The earliest estimates we suggest that between 7 and 8 in 10 saw themselves Muslim Arab, and under the growing influence of nationalism as the definition of Syrian identity. Unusual, I would say, was that the other 2 or 3 in 10 did not feel the same way. As in Ottoman times, they continued to live in economically autocratic autarky areas of the country and most of the cities and towns. Nationalists took this diversity as a primary for the weakness and doubted as their prime task integrated political structure. Legal split. The major Islamic movement, the Muslim Brotherhood, argued and fought for the idea that the Arabs are near. Muslim minorities were basically traditional, more conservative, nationalists believed that nationhood had to be built on religious or territorial base, that is, single state nationalism was the focus of Syria's statehood. Their program, however, did not lead to success, as they opened with a redefinition of Islam as pan-Arab or folk nationalism. As it was codified by Ba'ath Party, it required that Syria be considered not a separate nation state but a part of the whole Arab world, and be domestically organized and unified and at least partly westernized state. Part of the whole Arab world. Since this was particularly difficult task for the down communities, initially as it is trying to turbulence. So turncoats.
So, eventually after independence, the idea of Syria was very difficult to establish, and it has always been so in every country, even in India. And this is what has happened. So, okay, wow, this is interesting, very interesting. Something similar is some. I mean, this shade in Syria is very prominent because much greater large majority in Sunni Arabs. What happened in Syria basically was this: although Syria's economic and geopolitical situations were completely different from India, but there is one parallel, and only one parallel, that just highlights the way of thinking, which can be very toxic, I would say. So Syria, so Syria has been fought over by many empires, but the Ottoman Empire was the main holder, which is really true. In those times, Syria was an amalgamation of many people, but most were Sunni Arabs, and it was a tolerant nation in which multiple cultures existed. That is what we know about Syria, and there were many cultures that lived in the same cities. Most of the people spoke Arab, but the cultural identity remained, in which the people spoke their own languages as well, these minorities, and they lived uh, relatively happily. And there was no idea of Syria. There was no territory that defined that, okay, this is going to be Syria in the Ottoman Empire. It was just Ottoman Empire, leaving them to their own devices. There was nothing they would like to change. Only Damascus was a city that had any meaning. Other than that, Syria is just probably, it is a strategic place. It was a strategic place in those times. That is why they would fought over it. Nothing to be gained from there. Just having control is good enough for those empires. From that, there was a tolerance that was built up. Now, Ottoman Empire lost, and Treaty of Sevres happened, and Syria was basically given to French, which exercised 26 years of colonialism, which basically gave the idea of westernized nationhood. And these 26 years basically uh, shaped the debate of Syria as a nation. That is what I understood. So basically, from the Ottoman Empire, from the Ottoman Empire, can you see? Eyes can see. Oh, oh. What? You cannot see it? Wait a minute. I have been writing, I have been writing. This whole time, and you all cannot even see that? Oh my god, now you all can see it. Okay, I have been writing. Alright. So, Ottoman Empire, it means that there was transparency. No. Tolerance. Tolerance. And in cultures. Okay? There were in cultures. From this, there was French colonialism, which gave the idea of Syria. There were two ideas: secular and Muslim Arab. Secular and Muslim Arab, which harked on to this time, actually.
That's it. Basically, they do not subscribe to the idea of Syria. It's just a state of Arab world. That is how they look. Muslim Arabs look Syria as not a country but as a state of Arab. Which would explain why Egypt came to Egypt came to rule it for some time. Not only this idea means intolerance. For what? Intolerance for this. Encourage. Okay. This is what it is. It was okay. So now Syria are Arab. Lumi was saying politics and heightening the tension about the other post-war period has been the modern powerful American supported state of Israel. Obviously, Israel will be a problem because they are Arabs. Regular wars between Syria and Israel began almost before either state had achieved independence. Border clashes and former fighting in the Red Sea were just interspersed among these major confrontations, and since 1967 has occupied territory known as Golan Heights. In 1981, Israel proclaimed that it had annexed the territory, a move not recognized by US or others, moved 20,000 settlers there. Meanwhile, intermittent peace talks have been secretly helping finalize the result. A ceasefire negotiated in 1934 has helped, but today the two states are still legally at war. The Assad regime. This is the regime that is the problem, right? The Assad regime. It was an answer to the perceived weakness of Syrian statehood and the disorder of Syrian political life. The first Assad regime was established by Assad. Father currently the Assad family came from Alawi minority, which includes about 1 in 8 Syrians and about a quarter of a million people in both Lebanon. Jews are chosen people, but they are regarded by the Ottomans as heretics. Under Ottoman pluralism, this mattered little, but as Syrians struggle for a sense of identity, came to suspect social differences and to fear the cooperation of minorities. So how did they come to what? How did they come to rule it? Okay, but as since it is the center, I think it suspects of it as something national, being another Christian Jew, but people under a cloud. So for us, this national is well a national choice. Offered or seem to offer means to overcome the origins in a minority, leading to point where the solution for the disunity of Syria. So basically what he made an argument was that Syria is in trouble. It is not united. Minorities is fighting with each other. This is the wrong which is a problem. As well as they must have been fighting with Israel, which would mean that people were saying, okay, why are we fighting? Because we are Arabs? No, we do not want that. So okay, so Assad's pull was basically the pull was no fighting, I guess. No fighting with Israel, no fighting, and unity. Muslim Arabs is actually Muslim Brotherhood. The secular National Party or the national choice for us in all the means to origins. He therefore invested eagerly in the leader, consequently to his unnecessary and need for the party. Thus Saddam became a much larger, as much the over-investiary of al-Assad as he began Americas. There's Resurrection Party at its origin, like the Nationalist Party, National Party in France. Two young Syrians, one a Christian and another Sunni Muslim, who were studying in Paris, were both attracted to the front door of France and appalled by the weakness of Syria. Like Ho Chi Minh, they wanted to both become like France and get the French out of the nation. The future lay in unity and socialism. From Michel Aflaq and Salah Bitar, the forces to be defeated were French oppression and Syrian backwardness. The political class unable to measure up to the challenges of the time. One of the British General Patrick Seal's account was struggle for Syria. Above all, this unity had to be overcome. Their answer was to try to bridge the gap in the core from a modified version of socialism between Muslims and minorities to a modified concept of Islam. Islam, in their view, needed to be considered politically not as a religion but as a manifestation of Arab nation. Thus, the society they wish to create the program should be modern, for women, secular, which they related, and defined by a culture of Arabism, overriding the Christian concepts of ethnicity. What they sought was the very antithesis of an objectively strong growing of Muslim brotherhood. Okay. The antithesis of the objectives of this only strong growing Muslim brotherhood. Wow. Muslim brotherhood wanted themselves to be completely Muslim Arabs. Wait a minute, what? Antithesis. This is not antithesis. They also believe in Arab. So, in essence, Muslim Brotherhood wanted themselves to be Muslims and Arabs. So, okay, so they're Shia. What? What is that? Sharia law. The major argued and fought for the idea that the nation must be orthodox and no place nationhood should be okay, orthodox and Muslim. Drive out minorities, all that stuff. Be completely Muslim. They were secular and modern. Astonishing how vigorous the students were looking over how seriously violence students play a national role. Okay, guys, I will have to end the stream here. I have to go to the gym. Out of the gym, we will continue this. Yes, Syria, we'll look into that. All right. That's enough for today. Bye bye. We'll come back later. Back at it. Let's go. It's a creature of habit signing out. I will try 100 and we'll see what hits, you know. All right.